Are you confident yourself that President Johnson will run again in 1968?
Yes, I am.
You have no doubts at all?
No doubt in my mind whatsoever.
Well, just supposing for health or for other reasons that he doesn't, what do you think would happen?
I would assume somebody else would be nominated.
Well, that's a safe assumption, but...
Bailey, we're so glad that you asked us to come, and all of you honored us by asking us here tonight. I'm so proud and I'm so happy to share your honors and the great pride that you people of Chicago feel with your great mayor and my true and loyal friend for many years.
Mr. Mayor, are you satisfied with the way the convention went today?
I think it was one of the finest state conventions that I've attended, and I've attended a few of them in the last few years.
Mr. Mayor, why weren't any of the McCarthy people called upon to speak or offered the floor?
Well, don't say that, because they were. They were given the floor, but not only the floor, they were brought up on the platform, and Dick Mudge from Madison spoke for over 15 minutes and presented a motion. Maybe you weren't there.
What happened in Chicago was not a protest against the way delegates were chosen. It was a protest against the war. And the fact is that whatever the procedure, there will only be a real contest in terms of delegates to a nominating convention when there are issues that are very divisive, which will be not all the time. If there had been no war in Vietnam and Johnson had been doing well, Dick Daley could have picked every single delegate to the convention. There wouldn't have been a ripple at Chicago. But it was because of the issues. And therefore, most of the time, I think, under any procedure, the political leaders, those who spend their lives working at politics, because they are spending all the time at it, are going to end up running the delegation.
Mr. Mayor, there have been statements and charges that you are going to dictate the choice of the Illinois delegation.
Totally erroneous, imaginative, and surely not based with any evidence. It's the usual thing of television, press, radio. The figments of their imagination get the best of them, and they have to ask questions such as yours in order to arouse the emotions of the people. There's no dictation in the Democratic Party. There's never been any dictation. I've been the chairman of 2 conventions, one in 19 caucuses, in 60 and 64, and the men that are in this room know that every delegate was permitted to get up in the caucus, speak the way he wanted, and vote the way he wanted.
Chicago. We came in by buses, the delegates in enormous convoys, and the buses, as we turned into the stockyard, there was a huge sign that said, sheep and cattle to the right, hogs and goats to the left, and of course we followed the sheep and cattle.
As soon as I arrived, I knew what it was like to be a cow in Chicago. I mean, you walked into a pen, and you couldn't get out. It was a feeling of brutality. That's before there was any demonstration in the streets and before there was any real trouble. It was clear that the government was frightened. It's as close as I've ever gotten to the Berlin Wall in the United States. They were trying to keep the people or something emanating from the United States out of this area. It was a professional fencing himself in so he could carry on this game. They were all being led like sheep to the slaughter in their own private opinions. The brutality of it all is what struck me powerfully. And there was an overriding sense that no human voice could be raised against this successfully. It is a show. It's a piece of theater. It's rehearsed in advance, and it takes place on time. There is no place in the convention system for a real discussion of anything. The convention became the farce that it was, namely, an elongated stretch of boredom such as I never believed a human being could sustain and still live. Speeches went on and on and on with immense passions that said absolutely nothing for days. Everybody knew they were saying nothing, and I talked to some of the boys that were sitting there dutifully listening, and I said, what is he talking about? Because I, frankly, couldn't follow it. It was beyond my powers. Nobody knew not only what anybody was saying, but two-thirds of the time they didn't know who the speaker was. They were there in body, and they were keeping the seats warm, and that was it. I was dutifully occupying my seat and trying to see what there was to see, when someone handed me a sheet of paper on which was written a message from the people outside in the streets of Chicago saying that they were being mauled by the police, that there was no place they could run to, that the people were being slaughtered out there. And inside the convention, of course, all was as it should be. The place was well lit. The speakers were going on at length about nothing at all. And I handed this sheet of paper to Governor Dempsey, who was the leader of the state of Connecticut delegation, and he read it. And I watched him from just behind him and to the right of his shoulder. And he leaned over and held his head in his hands. And to me, it was as though the realization had come that they had won all the procedural fights. They had kept our delegation, the McCarthy delegation in Connecticut, down to a minimum. They had done us out of 4 or 5 delegates, which we should have had by right of the vote. We had won. Similarly, the other states, and they had won the whole legal game, but the truth had leaked out into the streets. And it was something to behold. He looked as though death had touched him.
And what we are doing is in the tradition of Lyndon B. Johnson, who rallied a grief-stricken nation. A grief-stricken nation when our leader was stricken by the assassin's bullet, and said to you and said to me and said to all the world, let us continue. And in the space of 5 years since that tragic moment, President Johnson has accomplished more of the unfinished business of America than any of his modern predecessors. And I truly believe that history will surely record the greatness of his contribution to the people of this land. And tonight to you, Mr. President, I say thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.